Hello, breadwinners. How are y'all today? Um, Happy to be back here with you today, and want to show you some shaping of different kinds of breads, different shapes of breads today. So that's what we're just having some technical challenges this afternoon. So, um, but we're here with you. Happy to be here. Great. So, we ready to get started? Okay. So I have here my dough. This is for a couple loaves, and I'm going to turn it out. A little bit of flour, not too much. Turn it out here, and I will divide it in half. And so most of the time when I'm making bread, if I've developed the gluten and made bread the way I normally do it, rather than the no-knead breads, I like to shape in two parts. A pre-shape with a rest of about 15, 20 minutes or so, and then a final shape. So after I've divided the dough, I just want to stretch it a little bit. Stretch, stretch, and pull it into a round like that, but not much more than that, okay? I'll show you again. I'm just sort of folding it over, stretching here, fold it, stretching, fold and stretch. If you stretch too much, then you start to tear it, and you want to avoid tearing the surface like that. So if you start to tear it, just fold that in and just be gentler with it. So we just want it a little pre-shaped like that, okay? And then this on a little flour. Now I hear myself from before. So sorry if there was a little lag there or a glitch or something. I started to hear myself from a minute ago. So these are going to rest usually under some kind of a cloth. And I have several shapes over here. So I'm going to put this shaping couche right here on my board. And I'm going to move these pre-shapes over here because I have some that I already pre-shaped before. And so there's a couple different shapes that we're going to cover. One is a round, the boule. And then we'll do some oblong shapes too, a batard shape and a pan loaf and something else at the end. So for a round, I'm going to turn it back over so that this seam side from before is on top. And then I'll flatten it out a little bit. Now this is the pre-shaped. It's already been shaped once, given that little bit of a stretch. Now I'm going to fold a tab like this over about 2/3 of the way and just press it in. Then I'll give a slight turn to the dough and pull another tab again over the top of that about 2/3 of the way. And I keep doing that. I'm going to do that about 5 times total. So over the top, pull it and stretch it. You see how it's stretching there? And then a 5th time like that. And then that's what's giving me my basic round shape. But I want to tighten this up even more and get it a more perfect round. So there's a couple ways to do that. And they involve using the table to grip the dough. You don't want it to stick to the table, stick hard to the table. But if it's a well-developed dough like this one, it's not going to. You want it to just grip on the table as you pull it. You're going to pull it like this towards you and see how it's stretching this more. At the same time you're pulling, though, you're going to be rotating to get that round shape. So you pull and it's stretching and rotating at the same time. Pull, stretch, and rotate. Pull, and that's stretching this gluten and making a nice round structure. that a couple times. And then you have the round shape. There's a, you can also do this. Same thing, pulling those tabs about 2/3 of the way. Pull it over there. Stretching this part, making a ball, a rough ball. And then instead of pulling it towards you, you can push it away with one hand. And at the same time be turning. So see how my hand is sort of flat here? And I'm pushing and it's turning the dough at the same time. Push and turn, push and turn. And that gathers this little bit of dough under there. It's going to become the seam. Push and again, I want to be careful that I'm not tearing this surface. That's going to, if you tear the surface, you're going to tear the gluten and it's not going to have the structure that you want. So just turn it like that. And then for a round loaf like this, I'm going to take a round proofing basket, a banneton here. I have a little bit of flour. I'm going to just dust the inside. And then most of the time, you're going to turn it so that the seam side is up in your banneton. Okay, so it's upside down, right? Because when you're ready to bake, after this is proofed and filled this up, then you're going to turn it out this way onto your peel. So down the floured top is that's the stretched surface, that's the top of the loaf. Okay? So upside down in the banneton like that. Great. Now, so for an oblong, a long shape, we're going to do, you can see I still have a round pre-shape here. So I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to flatten it out a little bit. And if I want to do kind of a traditional tapered batard shape, I'm going to leave it round here because that's going to help me get that taper. So I'm going to start with this edge that's closest to me. And I'm going to fold it up over the dough on top about 2/3 of the way and push it in a little bit. See that? About 2/3 of the way. Push it in. Now I'm going to take the top edge of it and do the same thing, but towards myself, over the top of that, and press it in. You can see there. See, it's covered this other, this is our first flap. This one's going over and covering it, and it's patted in like that. Now, the final one, the final fold, I'm trying to get here. Okay, I'm going to stretch this top edge down to meet the bottom edge and make my seam that way. I'm going to use my non-dominant thumb, and I'm going to just stick it, my left thumb here, just stick it in the middle, stick it on the dough there, and then pull that top edge with my right hand over the top. And again, I'm stretching the gluten here. And then I press in with the heel of my hand along the seam. I move my thumb over a little bit and stretch this part over the top and press it in. You can see I'm pressing it in with the heel of my hand. I don't want to use my fingers because then I have these indentations that I don't want. That's why I use the flat heel of my hand to seal that. So you just go along there and seal that along the seam all the way. So let's see, you have that seam right there. Then I'm going to place my hands on top here, and I'm going to roll it back and forth to help to seal that seam and give it a more round shape. And I'm also going to have my hands angled like this and make that taper. Now we started the taper because we had that round shape to begin with. So it, balls up more in the middle, and we have that nice taper. I can also sometimes use my thumbs along here. They catch by the seam, and they just press and stretch it a little bit tighter if it needs it. Okay? Now this shape was probably going to go onto a baking couche like this. And so you can, for some things you don't want a flour, but if you want a little bit of, if you think it's a real sticky dough or you want a little bit of decorative flour on top of the loaf, when you're ready to bake, just flour the couche a little bit like that. And then again, I usually put these seam side up. And then when I take them out, I'm going to flip them over, and that part that's on the flour, that stretched part, is going to be the top. okay? So that same thing we can do, that same basic shaping we'll do again. This time though, I'm going to press it out a little bit, and I'm going to just stretch it gently here and here and make it a little bit more rectangular, like this. Just stretch it out just a little bit, okay? Because I'm not going to taper the ends for this one. So again, I'm going to fold over the top away from me about 2/3 of the way and press it in. I'm going to take the edge away from me and fold it back over the top of that flap and 2/3 of the way and press it in. Then I'm going to use my hand, my thumb in there, stretch it over the thumb, meet the top edge meets the bottom edge and becomes your seam by pressing it in with the heel of my hand, like that, all along there, okay? Now this time I'm going to start in the middle and I'm going to roll, but I'm going to not taper it. I'm going to just have these blunt ends, and I can kind of fix those ends up a little bit with some pinches, like this. And then this loaf right here can go in one of these oblong baskets. Again, just going to flour it a little bit. And these are fun. This banneton, of course, is lined with a linen lining. So you're going to just get that flower pattern without the basket pattern itself. But this one has these coils. It's a wicker basket that's coiled like that, and because there's no liner, it's going to show that little bit of a pattern of the flower on the top of the loaf. Again, seam up. Put it in the basket like that. Seam up. And when it's time to bake, you turn the basket over and your seam side is down. Okay? So that same shape we can take and do one more time. Press it out and make it a little more rectangular, like this. Okay. Now, same thing. The bottom edge up over the top about 2/3 of the way, press it in. Top edge over that, about 2/3 of the way, press it in. And then that top edge down to meet the bottom edge and make your seam. Seal it with the heel of your hand all the way along. Good. Then I'm going to roll it again. And this one I want, again, I do not want this one tapered. I want it a pretty even cylinder like this. And this one is what's going to go into my tin, my bread pan. This is a 4 by 9 inch pan. Okay. Now this time, because it's just going to stay in this pan and bake right in this pan, we want the stretch side up and the seam side down, because we're not turning it out. And in general, with a pan bread, I want it to touch the ends, but not the sides. I want it in the middle there. It's hard to show like this, but so it's straight down the middle and touching at the ends. And then this is going to come up and fill this pan really nicely. This one I would proof till just you don't see those sides anymore. It's covering the whole side. It'll dome up a little bit like this, and then it's ready to bake. Okay? Now, I told you we'd do one more shape. It's basically what we've just done, only you can see, first of all, this is a smaller piece of dough, and I've pre-shaped it long because I want this one to be long. And so, it's the same as the batard shape. I'm going to press it out a little bit, not too much though, because I want to keep some of that fermentation gases in there. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take the bottom edge up over the top, about 2/3 of the way, and press it in. I'm going to take that top edge and go over it again, about 2/3 of the way, and press it in. Again, I'm using the heel of my hand, not my fingers. I don't want indentations where there's like a tight space in a open space in between it. I want it to press evenly on there. Okay. Now I'm going to do this again where I take this top edge and stretch it over my thumb down there to meet the seam. Can you see that? See? stretching it over, sealing it with the heel of my hand all the way down several times, just stretching. See, these fingers are stretching it a little bit. Want a nice taut surface. And then we have a long piece like that. But what we're going to do now is roll it out longer to be a baguette. So I'm going to start with my hands over each other like this in the center, and I'm going to roll back and forth. And as I'm rolling, I gradually just move my hands outward like that. Now, it's still not as long as I want it to be, so I'm going to return to the center, hands over the top of each other, back and forth, and move my hands out. And that stretches the dough out long. And there we have a baguette. Okay, I'm going to put that on my couche. Now, the thing with the couche is, you see there's this batard here. Maybe we'll put that in the middle there. I'm going to pull the couche up in and make a fold in it in between this and the next bread. So again, I want my seam up, and it's going to lie right in there. And then again, I fold this couche up. So it makes a little trough here, but this bread is helping to hold the shape of the one next to it. But the folds in between keep it from sticking together. Okay, oh, I have this piece. This is I was going to show you the pre-shape for a baguette. So this is just a piece of dough. Again, it's smaller. This is 350 grams. The others are about 800 grams. So I'm going to press it out just gently, and then just sort of tuck it, and see how I'm stretching there just a little bit, and just stretch it. I'm not trying to stretch this too much, and I definitely don't want to tear it. And then this is the piece that's going to rest for about 15 to 20 minutes. This one's been resting. Again, the seam's down there, so I'm going to put maybe a tiny bit of flour there. Press it out just gently, gently. Take the bottom edge, pull it up away from me about 2/3 of the way. Top edge, over the top of that, 2/3 of the way towards me. Sealing with the heel of my hand. Again, starting on this side, I'm going to just stretch with these fingers over my thumb and seal along the bottom to make my seal. Top edge meets the bottom edge and makes your seam. Like that. Okay, and now it's ready to put my hands over each other and roll back and forth and stretch it out. Now, the thing that people typically do, the mistakes they typically make at this point are, you really want to roll it back and forth like this and keep it a nice round cylinder like this. If you just rock it like this and press down, you're going to flatten it. It's not going to stay a nice cylinder if you do that, okay? So you really want to roll it back and forth. I'm using about 12 inches, maybe a little bit more of the table. I'm starting here and rolling up and then rolling back. Rolling up, rolling back, and that keeps it a nice round cylinder. So when I'm doing this, I'm rolling, 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 and my hands are moving out. So the pressure is really out, not much down. It's a little bit down, but not much. It's mostly out. I turn to the center and go out like that. Now what happens if I don't? See, I want to start together and then move them out like this, right? Otherwise, if I start like this, I'm going to get this big part right here, and it usually will end up with a big bubble in it that you don't want. So make sure you start on top of each other, start rolling, and it's that pressure outward that lengthens your baguette. So there we go. So it's two basic shapes, a round and then a long shape. But you can see we can do the long tapered for a batard. We can do a smaller piece and really lengthen it out for a baguette. Or that batard shape without the taper can become either in a proofing basket like this that has a oval shape, or it can be a nice pan bread like this. but it's all basically the same shaping. Of course, the round is a little bit different, but it's the same principle. You pre-shape it to get the gluten stretched a little bit. It starts it on its way. Then your shaping is taking this pre-shaped piece and stretching the gluten even more to give it more structure. As you go around, you're stretching it. Or if you're doing the long loaf, you stretch it like this. You're stretching this surface. And again, you don't want to stretch it so much that it breaks. You just want to stretch it so it's tight. You get a nice tight structure to your loaf. And then that's what rises really nicely, gives you great oven spring because it has that structure to hold up and hold in those gases really well. And you have a nice loaf of bread. All right. Do we have any questions coming through? But I will be back on the group in a little bit. And so fire off any questions you have. I'd love to see them. It's always fun Friday afternoons baking with y'all. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next week.